and I served 10 years in the colours, about 10 years in green, and then 10 years as reserve. So, served in Northern Ireland, Cyprus through the war, Germany, Ireland again, Canada, Falklands, and I come out about 18 months, 2 years after the Falklands.
You came out in 82?
83 really, just 83 I come out. Had a ball, had an absolute scream. Had some nightmares, you know, but doing the job you get paid for. 99.9% of the time you're in the army, sheer boredom. But that 0.01% when it's not boredom, it gets very, very interesting. And the one thing I can say about the army, in my opinion, for me, is it showed me that I can handle myself, but I could. And I'm not a coward. I didn't run when other people did. And the old-fashioned thing. I'm a man. I stood there, you know. I stood in the line. I was there. I did my bit, you know, not just for Queen and Country, but for all my mates as well. Though. So yeah, that's a cracking time. Cracking time.
What was Cyprus like?
Cyprus in 1973. Macarius, Prime Minister. He decided he wanted the Greeks to take over Cyprus. A lot of people don't understand what happened with Cyprus and why Cyprus occurred. But there was a tripartite agreement with Cyprus that if the Greeks tried to invade, or the Turks tried to invade, Britain would stop them. The Greeks tried to have a civil war. The Brits sat back and let them. We reneged on the deal. So the Turks came in. And it was not nice, and it was not nice for a lot of people. Exacerbated, the troubles that I saw were exacerbated because we were not allowed to do anything. We had to be neutral. We might as well have wore a sky blue beret and be United Nations because we were neutered. We were not allowed to do a thing. I sat back, I watched paratroopers shot out the sky. I watched them bomb Famagusta. And there's nothing I could do. We weren't even allowed to administer succour to wounded soldiers who had landed in the SBA because it was in contravention. You know?
What's the SBA?
Sovereign base area. It's, yeah. If you look at Cyprus in the military map, around Keelia, that's the first SBA. That's where all, I think most of them are gone now, but that's where all the British barracks were. Right. That is England. Just outside of Limassol, between Limassol and Famagusta, you've got Aria Facateri and the other SBA, which is Episcopi. Freezing in here. And that is where the British troops, and the majority, were based. We had United Nations troops there, working in conjunction with all the other UN countries. But I was in the green as opposed to the sky blue. So I was patrolling around the SBA. We had in Keelia the Kintaras carton factory, which was where a lot of refugees had got themselves. because the Greeks know the Turks could get to them because they were on the SBA. The physical boundaries of the SBA are painted white stones. There's no fence. There's no checkpoints. It's painted white stones. Once you get over those stones, you're safe. So we got a lot of refugees in this car factory, and we kept an eye on them. One side of the factory, we had the Turkish lines. The other side of the factory, we had the Greek National Guard lines. So we basically patrolled dusk, dawn and midday between the two lines, trying to keep friendly contact with the two opposing armies, and also to keep them away from these refs. And the refugees, the laughable thing about it is the Turkish and Greek Cypriot refugees. They lived together for generations, and they've been moved by two different countries who were fighting over these people's lands. And we have to protect them from their supposedly own armies. It's ludicrous.
You get to know any of them but on a personal level?
No, you never get. No, you couldn't. There's no way you could. For vehicle patrol, you've got in any patrol time something like a 30 or 40 mile area you've got to cover. That's roads, tracks, orange groves, any type of citrus grove, and that's where the Turkish and the Greek lines were. So you've got to find where the headquarters are. You've got to keep an eye on what's going on. You never had time. The officers may have jumped out and spoke to the headmen of the refugees, be it Turk, be it Cypriot. But the rest of the time, it's, watch out, watch out. We would keep an eye out. You were in a war situation with no rounds in the main armament, because we had to sell them, which is a 76mm armoured personnel, APC. We had no rounds for that. We were allowed a tin of 250 7.62 ammunition for the machine gun, but that was not to be attached. It's like the drink laws in America. If you're in a car and you have beer in the car, the beer has got to be in the furthest point in that car from the driver. So it's on the diagonal from the driver, the back of the boot. And that's how the weapons and the ammunition had to be for us to do our jobs in the SBA. It was a joke. We stood one time overlooking the Famagusta Plain from just outside the Cantadas carton factory, and we watched the Turkish Air Force bomb the old town of Famagusta. 2 days previous to that, we were actually drinking in the harbour. We had to sit back and watch them bomb it. A week or so after that, the Turks decided to throw a parachute drop in. Typical of any type of plan, it went awry. Instead of dropping at night, they dropped about 7:30 of the morning. Bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, 2,000 paratroopers in the air. In the brilliant Cypriot morning sun, the Greek National Guard sat underneath them and shut the bejesus out of them. Couldn't do a thing. We had to sit there. I had one paratrooper, half a paratrooper, fly over my wagon on his parachute. The bottom half of him from his navel down had been blown away, it just wasn't there. So was trailing on trails and everything. Dead. Coming down on a chute. He landed basically in mine and my gunner's faces. And we had to push him off the vehicle and not help administer or succour that poor man's corpse in any way, because it was against the law, it was against the rules. We were covered in this man's blood. Couldn't do it. We took a grid reference where it all happened. We radioed it across. We had to send it in clear because they could see where we were. And we were told not to touch him, but to take the magazines off his body. And when we questioned that, they said, in case they come and take the magazines themselves. So we questioned back, hang on, we've got one that's wounded here. He's about 10-20 yards outside the SBA. We need to go and help him. You can't touch him. Okay. What happens when he dies? Do we go and take his magazines? Yes. I was 19 and I had to deal with that. And I did that after 18 months in Northern Ireland. We were supposed to go to Cyprus for an 18-month holiday. But because of the war and that was cut to us 6 months emergency tour. So I did 18 months in Northern Ireland before I did that. I'm still getting over some of the things that went on in Ireland, and we walked into that. It's a joke. Absolute joke. On the flip side of all that, Christmas Day of 1974, Pat's sitting on the Cessac beach with a cold chicken, a litre of Carlsberg, smashed at my skull in about 80 degrees of heat. New Year in Cyprus, England, United Nations from Canada, so we had Canada and we had Australia. So and plus the Cypriot New Year, we have 4 New Years. I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning, well, I was woken up at 3 o'clock in the morning, to go on patrol, which we weren't supposed to do because the Gurkhas were supposed to be doing our dawn patrol, but our sergeants in his wisdom wanted us to do it. So we had to do, with a lot of Scotties will know what I'm talking about when I say we had to do a white line patrol down to the vehicles, which is basically on your hands and knees down the white line at the centre of the road to find your way home. We were so drunk. We got in the wagons, we did it. I mean, people don't realise Cyprus gets a frost. And it was -2 out there, heavy frost down. We were sobered up in no time. We came back through the camp gates by 8:30 that morning, stone cold sober, standing up in the heat. Even the guards were drunk. They were draped over the gates. Straight from there into the cookhouse, full English breakfast. People just couldn't cope with it for the amount we drank the night before, and then out doing that. We went up. We were like 10-foot tall gods then, you know. Brilliant. I mean, it's the stuff kids' magazines, boys' comics are about. You know, that's what we did. It was absolutely fantastic. We had a ball, but some really nasty moments. One of the funniest things I ever seen, again in Cyprus. We were at a village called Athna. Athna's claim to fame was it wasn't on the southern base area, but it was on the side of what they call the concession road, which between 9-6 Mercury Barracks, which is a place called Ias Nikolaias, and Tequila, they have a concession road that they're allowed to use to get from one to the other. Well, there's 2,000 Turks in Athena and a 6-man United Nations watch post. So 12 of us, a troop, was put at the end of Athena on the SBA in case the United Nations needed to pull out. And we used to stand there for 12 hours a day, right the way through. We used to change over once a day. 12 hours a day you're there. This day, 2,000 Turkish troops decided they wanted to go and sit across the concession road. As I said before, we've only got 250 rounds of ammunition, and there's 2,000 of them. No chance. So They went and did what they wanted to do. And then it was like watching an Ealing comedy. This Turkish officer come down with epaulets on, like desktops on his shoulders, covered in braid, pencil moustache, and mirror sunglasses. And we went, aye, yeah, boss. Our lieutenant was on the radio, so we called him, someone to see you, sir. So he stepped off his vehicle, he went down to shake this guy's hand, and he was met with the broadest Cockney accent you've ever heard. What, my son? Oh, yeah. Our officer, an Eton bully, was slightly taken aback. And it worked out this guy went home to Turkey for a holiday from where he lived in London. He worked as a waiter in a steakhouse. And Bernie's Inn steakhouse, I may add. Never forget him. And whilst he was there, he was collared for his conscription. And because he was fluent in English, if you can call Cockney English, he was put straight into the officer corps, and he was going to be one of the translators. So when we asked him politely to take his troops back, he had to refuse point blankly because he was told that's what he had to say. He had no military experience at all. So my boss had to say to him, well, you do know we're going to have to bring the secret weapon out now. Well, you need to do what you need to do, Gov, is what he said. So we got on the radio to 96 Mercury Barracks, and about 5 minutes later, you heard the sound of Land Rovers coming down the concession road. Now, an Army Land Rover makes a distinct noise. It's like a wasp. You can hear them from miles away, like the old American Huey helicopters. You can hear the chukka chukka chukka. You can hear an Army Land Rover. 2 Land Rovers pulled up next to our vehicles, and 12 Gurkhas got out and started pulling the kukris. Now the Turks know if the Gurkhas pull the kukris, blood has got to be drawn, and they did not want it to be theirs. So en masse, the 2,000 Turks got up and walked back into Athens. The Gurkhas had to cut the thumb because they drew the kukris. Saluted us, got back on the Land Rovers, and buggered off back to 96. It was so surreal. It was straight out of an Ealing comedy. I was looking for Alec Guinness to pop his head up somewhere. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. The long and the short of it was, and the problem as just being a lowly trooper that we saw there, was the British government had reneged on a deal and caused untold hardship to untold thousands of people. You know, could have all been stopped. Could have been stopped before it started, because they were all scared of the Brits. I mean, the laughable thing about it now is you can see through our armed forces. They're so thin on the ground, they're transparent. But the British soldier is still probably the most professional soldier in the world, and probably is and will be the only ever ultimate professional soldier, taking in all the rest of NATO, all the rest of them. None of them come anywhere close to being anything like the squaddies that we've got, that we were. But I can tell you now that the squaddies, being a Tommy in the First World War trenches, to being a lad in Sangin now in Afghanistan, right, they've got one thing in common. They're all truly professional idiots, because they're only there because they are idiots, because they believe in honour, and they believe in the crown, and they believe in the duty, but they don't do it for Queen and country, they do it for the mates. I picked up a few ricochets and this, that and the other in Northern Ireland, and I didn't do it for Queen and country. I could honestly say I didn't do it for the Irish. I did it to protect my mates, you know, because at the end of the day you're down to your base unit, a 4-man brick. You do it for them. I had a ball. I had 10 years, absolutely brilliant 10 years. I was on rapid promotion when I came out of Cyprus. I was a corporal by the time I was 22. By the time I was coming up the army, they give me my third. They wanted me to go on, and they were looking at me, grooming me to be the senior NCO. I had a family by then. I'd seen a lot of things go wrong. I'd seen a lot of trouble. I'd seen the callousness of Whitehall. I was in the Falklands, you know, and that's where I seen the callousness of it all. Really, really saw it. That's when I grew, I suppose, a political head, where I understood what was happening.